Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Friday. It is also Minnesota Timberwolves game day, which everybody is excited for, not just me, right? This is like a national holiday now when the Timberwolves play some basketball. All right, being stupid. I mean, I'm excited it's Timberwolves game day playing the Mavs. I think that's one of the fun games to look forward to on this card. Honestly, the card overall feels like a little bit of a mess to me, but there are a couple potentially good spots today. We're going to talk through all of them. Before I do just want to say, I think I referenced this a couple days ago, but capping the NBA really feels like it's gone through a shift in the last week or so to me. Maybe other people have always capped it this way, but many of the games today, what I see in terms of the numbers and what I think situationally and just in terms of where these teams are at are in direct opposition. And there was a time earlier in the season where I was pretty successful and it was almost all data driven. And then, I had a really, really rough patch, probably, but some of you unfollowed me, maybe you're back following now, whatever. Or a lot of you really stuck with me, even though I sucked for a while, which is incredibly appreciated. But during that time, it's like I kept the same model and it didn't work. And so I'm trying to get better about adjusting on the fly and paying attention to even little signs that things aren't working. And as we approach the end of this NBA season, I've felt some of that where even the numbers and then trying to weave in some trends and different things, which was working for me, even a few weeks ago, isn't quite the whole picture the way that it was before. And I really am having to read into some more of who might play, who is going to try, who needs to win, who's in a bad spot, all that kind of stuff. So just to say, as we go through this, I definitely am going to still give you the data, but also probably going to be giving you some takes on where these teams are at. And that's where you just have to decide if you agree with that or not. Because obviously when there's numbers involved, you can just say hard and fast, hey, they have an offensive rating of 114 their last 14 games, whatever. That's a fact. Nothing to debate there. But to say this is a team that's lost some motivation and doesn't seem like they want to try when they go out there anymore, well, that's an opinion. Subjective. So yeah, happy to have you agree with me or disagree, but hopefully we can at least raise some good conversation points to figure out where we're going on these games. So with that said, this is the NBA breakdown for Friday, March 25th. Up first, we got the Jazz at the Hornets. Utah minus 3.5 and a total of 228.5. So I put this out on Twitter yesterday, but super interesting. There's a number of different things that I do in my process now, but one of those things is I have a couple lists of trends that I look at, and some of those trends are within the season. They have this against the spread record on back-to-backs or playing a team with a losing record, whatever it is. And when I look at those, I try to gauge which trends matter more. And, sometimes a team will have like all positive recent trends. Sometimes it's more of a mixed bag. This is the first game I can remember since I've started looking at that where neither one of these teams had a single positive trend on anything that I looked at. Like I pulled up the Jazz first and I was like, oh crap, their trends are terrible. This is going to be, positive for the Hornets on this one factor. And then I pulled up the Hornets. I'm like, oh shit, they're terrible too. So both of these teams have been, even though Charlotte won a few games before their most recent one, I don't think either of these teams has been playing particularly well. And especially they've come out really slow. Now, I was reading an article that said, they can't both come out and go down by 15 points in the first quarter. So either one team's going to do that or they're going to stay closer. But just all that to say, both of these teams come into this game, I don't think playing particularly well. And for the Jazz, part of that is Bogdanovich still being out. Not that he's the linchpin to their team or anything, but again, we've talked about this. It just gives them another scorer, a little bit more spacing, more space for Mitchell to work with. Another wing defender, even not that he's a great defender, but it's another person to throw out there. So I think that's some of it for Utah. And then on the Charlotte side, we've seen all year they have a ton of talent, but they're super inconsistent. And maybe that's partly that they're young, but sometimes they show up and sometimes they don't. In terms of some of the numbers, Utah's scoring on the road has really not been good lately. In their last 6, they did have one game where they scored 116, but the others have been 108 or less, 106, 102, 103, 97. Really not good. The defense has been decent, though. They gave up 125 to Boston, but other than that, their defense has held people more in that 105 to 115 or 17 range. So the defense has been okay. On the Charlotte side, they're just so hard to gauge. Their scoring has been so weird. Just as an example, they scored 129 against Dallas. I mean, Dallas is one of two teams, Dallas and Boston, where you expect a strong defensive effort and you tend to fade teams scoring against them, but they scored 129. But then they scored 106 against the Pelicans and the Knicks, both teams that haven't been playing a whole lot of defense lately. So trying to gauge where the Hornets will be offensively is, I think, one of the bigger challenges in capping the NBA right now, because they have all the talent in the world and can go off offensively, but a lot of times they just don't. Their defense has been more good than bad, especially at home. So that's something too where, for a long time we thought of Charlotte as a team that didn't play any defense. That hasn't necessarily been the case. In terms of the head-to-head matchup here, Utah has won 8 straight against Charlotte. And so this is one where the numbers honestly don't paint a very clear picture. They paint a picture of a Utah team that's struggling, a Charlotte team that's very inconsistent. So based purely on kind of where I feel like these teams are and reading sort of about where the locker rooms are and stuff, not the clubhouse, you get what I'm saying. I actually want to lean Charlotte here. I think that Charlotte actually has the higher upside with where they are right now, but it's just not a team that I can trust enough to put my money on most of the time. I think it is a decent chance that this stays a close game, and I just don't trust either of these teams right now. So I won't be betting a side on this. Again, hopefully some of that information is useful to you if you're thinking about betting a side. And then in terms of the total, I would lean toward the over, but again, so inconsistent that I can't do that with any confidence. So this is a game I'll be passing on altogether. Next up, we have the Wizards at the Pistons. The Wizards are on a back-to-back. They're 6-4-1 against the spread on back-to-backs. They've been like 3-3 in their last 6, I think, straight up. That's not against the spread. The Wizards have been pretty terrible, though. Excuse me. Kuzma is a game-time decision again today. Who knows if he'll play or not? I mean, he didn't play last game, and then the game before, I think he got his minutes cut way down. So I don't know if they're just tanking and they're not going to play him anymore. That's definitely a possibility. They're like, what is it, 6 games? I'd have to look. 6 games out of the 10th spot in the East or something. So they're not mathematically eliminated, but they're not making the playoffs in any way, shape, or form. So this is a team that is likely to be in full-on tank mode, even though Porzingis did play in their last game. The big story for me here is that Washington's away from home. They've just quit scoring. They scored 102 against Milwaukee without Giannis and Middleton. They scored 97 against Houston. I talked about that yesterday. 97 against the Knicks, 112 against Golden State, 118 against Portland, who's terrible defensively, and then 109 against the Lakers. Like, they've just been really bad offensively here recently. Defense has been not great either. Allowed 114 or more in 9 out of their last 10, 120 or more in 4 of their last 10. And this shows up in their offensive and defensive ratings over the last 14 games. Their offensive rating at home has been 122.1, really good. But on the road, it's 106.8, which is really not very good. And I mean, to see a swing of 16 points, I got to do the freaking math here. 16 points between home and road is an insane split. So they've just been terrible. Their defensive rating at home has been 123.5 and on the road 117.2. So their defensive rating has been a little better, but let's not bury the lead. Their defensive rating on the road is still 117.2. 123.5 is just so atrocious, but 117.2 is no good. So Washington's not playing well on offense or defense, and especially on the road for offense. On the Detroit side, this is a team that's played pretty well overall. They've played fairly solid. They're still not a good team. I think your best bet likes to say they're the best bad team in the NBA, and I think that's a great way to put it. I think that's pretty spot on. They've scored a bit better recently. They scored 122 versus Atlanta, 115 versus Portland, which who cares, right? 134 versus Orlando. But they had been like 105 and under a lot of the time before that. So I'm not saying that they're like a great offensive team now, but it's been a little bit promising. Their defense has been really volatile. They've given up all the way to 120, all the way down to 101 over their last 6. So it's just really up and down. Their home and road splits are similar. One thing to watch here will be who plays on the back-to-back. I don't know how much Washington will sit people. It's actually kind of hard for me to imagine that they're going to play Porzingis again after he played yesterday, and then Kuzma, like I said, is a game time decision. I'm not sure it matters. I think it's very possible Washington cuts minutes down. The side I actually want to watch is Detroit, because I know that they have looked at sitting people some more. Jeremy Grant's minutes have gotten cut down sometimes. So I don't know how committed they are to losing right now. This is a game where both teams might be pretty committed to losing. So the way that I'm capping this game is assuming that Detroit's playing their guys and they're not going to totally cut them off. So if you get news before the game that's not the case, then I would change this. But I actually capped this game as a 10-plus point win for Detroit. I just think Washington's in such a bad place right now. And Detroit's been playing well. I kind of wonder if they want to keep building a little bit of momentum through the end of this season with Cade Cunningham running the show that like leads them into a more hopeful offseason. So that's the kind of stuff, again, where agree or disagree. That's just opinion from where I sit. So Detroit 3.5. I like Detroit. I got them at 2.5, but I did bet this one already. I only did one unit. It's one of two spots where I would consider 2 units today, but I didn't jump at it yet. And in terms of the total, no opinion. I don't like it. Next up, we got the Warriors at the Hawks. Draymond Green should be back for this one. Golden State beat Miami without Green, without Porter, Iguodala. So, yeah, all their bench players came through, but Miami's been pretty bad the last couple. But we're here to talk about the Warriors and the Hawks. Feels really hard to know what the Warriors are going to be able to do without Steph. Obviously, they did fine against Miami in their last game, but they have scored 4 less points a game without Steph this year. They've also given up 7 more per game without Steph. But we also have to factor in there that Draymond Green was out for a lot of that time. And while he helps them some on offense, I think he helps them a lot more when Steph's there with setting Steph up. But he does help them defensively. So the Warriors' defensive rating is actually close to 10 points better. It's 9 points better with Draymond in the lineup. And so I do think it matters that he's out there. Hopefully he can keep his cool enough to even stay in the game, not get double teed and thrown out or anything. So I'm not sure what to say about Golden State offensively, other than they do still have the potential to put up a lot of points, and the Hawks' defense is not very good. And I think Golden State can be at least reasonably solid on defense, though Atlanta at times has been really good offensively. However, they are another team that's just been all over the place. They lost to Detroit by 21 and beat Memphis by 15 in the last, I think it was 6 or 7 games, just as an example. They lost to the bad team by 20 plus, and then they beat the really good team by 15. They just don't really make any sense on a regular basis. There's no consistency for them offensively or defensively. They just look like, like a 2-year-old that's just kind of all over the place, and you don't know if they're going to fall down and start crying or go play with a toy or run outside or fall down and take a nap. Like, that's the Hawks right now. No, they're a 2-year-old. Let's see. In terms of motivation here, Atlanta's locked into the play-in. It's going to be the 9 or 10 seed. Not sure that there's a lot of motivation for them to do much there. Golden State is pretty locked into the 3 seed, though they do need to win a few more games to make sure they stay there. And then Atlanta has been a little bit better at home is the only other thing I'd say. Their defensive rating's been worse, or a little better. Their offensive rating has been 10 better, so that's significant. This is another game I'm staying away from. If you made me pick, I would pick Atlanta minus 2.5 here, and I would pick the over. I think this game definitely could go over, but I don't like any of it enough to put my money on it. All right, next up, we got the Knicks at the Heat, who I was just referencing as being so terrible the last couple games. Miami's on the front end of a back-to-back. They're 4-3 straight up over the last 7 games on the front end of a back-to-back. Not much to take away there. The big thing here is that Miami's whole team is a game-time decision. Robinson, Butler, Tucker, Hero, Oladipo is out. Martin, game-time decision. So on the Knicks side, Randall, Robinson, both game-time decisions. It is very hard to cap a game like this when you have like half the starting lineup plus on each side. That's a game-time decision. So I'm going to say that we're going to pretend people are playing. That's how we're going to approach this one for now, and then we'll just have to adjust based on what we see. The Knicks have scored well on the road lately, all the way up to 131 in one game. The bottom was 107, so not too bad. Defense has been all over, under 104 out of their last 10, but um, 110 or more, and 110 or under in 7 of the last 10. So, decent. And they actually have been better on the road. So this is the big thing with New York for me looking at this game, is that their offensive rating is 9 points better on the road in the last 14 games than it is at home. And their defensive rating is 2.5 points better. So a 10 plus difference with those two combined. New York's just been better on the road. Miami, on the other hand, they're what makes this tough because they've been absolute shit the last 2 games. Do they snap out of that now because they had their big blow up on the sideline with Butler and Spo and whatever, which was hilarious. I loved how that got handled. That's an aside, but I don't know. Do they just snap out of it? I mean, I feel like Miami's just underachieving a lot right now. They lost by 14 to Golden State without Green, Thompson, Curry. They lost by 7 to Philadelphia without Harden and Embiid. They're just not playing really great. But I will say, except for the couple good offenses they've played, they have been holding teams under 110 on defense. So their defense has been all right. I lean toward the Knicks here with the points if everybody is playing. However, this is another game I'm probably going to stay away from just because Miami is the number 1 seed in the East. They need to try to hold on to it. They're only 1 game up for that now. And so if they're going to hold on to that number 1 seed, they got to come out and win some games. I don't know how toxic the locker room is right now. Spoelstra handled it well, and I think maybe was able to diffuse it. Jimmy Butler does tend to blow teams up eventually. Speaking of which, Timberwolves. But the Knicks are also hard to trust. There's no reason for them to come out and really, really get after it. But if I was going to pick this game, that's where I would go. So far, only spot I really like is the Pistons. There is going to be one more. But a lot of these games, again, it's like narrative versus data or just a lot of inconsistency from these teams. Next up, we have the Mavs at the Timberwolves. Minnesota's minus 3.5, 228.5 total. These teams just played 4 days ago. Dallas won 110 to 108. Really good game. Fairly low scoring given these two teams. And right now, Luka and Cat are game time decisions. I think it's very likely they both play. I mean, these games are important for both of these teams right now. Let's see. Dallas is tied with Utah for the 4th seed, but only 3 games back of Golden State for number 3. So they definitely have a chance to lock up number 4 and get that home court advantage, if not even potentially move up to number 3 and avoid the Suns even in the second round. Minnesota's 1 game back of Denver for the number 6 seed right now. So they're a play-in team and pretty solidly a play-in team, but they actually do have an opportunity to move up into that number 6 slot and not be in a play-in. It's going to be tough for them to do. They've just played Milwaukee, Dallas, Phoenix. Now they're playing Dallas again, and then they play Boston on Sunday. It's been a pretty brutal stretch in terms of the schedule, and so this is a game right here that I think they really need to win if they want to stay in that contention for number 6. When we look back at the game these two teams just played, a couple things that stand out. One is that Dallas shot 30.4% from 3, and they're generally shooting 35% plus. So there's a solid chance that they shoot better from 3-point range in this game than they did in the first one, which would bump them, obviously, bump them up some in terms of their potential scoring. On the Minnesota side, they shot 39.6% from field goal range. That's the first time they shot under 40% in 14 games. And most of the time they've been over 50%. Now, Dallas is definitely a good defense, and I want to give some credit there in terms of them being able to stifle Minnesota's offense some. But I would expect Minnesota to shoot better as well. They did shoot okay from 3-point range, 35.1 in that game, but they've been over 40 most of the time. So again, let's give Dallas some credit defensively, but I also think that both of these teams stand to have better offensive games than they did in the first one. In the last 14 games, Dallas has been slightly better at home. They're away here. Minnesota's been slightly worse on the road. They're at home, so that's a good thing for them. I think this is another really competitive game. And like I said, I think this is probably the most fun one on the slate to actually tune into and watch. I think there should be high energy, very competitive. I see this being another close game, which is why I'd stay away from a side here. I kept this as Minnesota 117, Dallas 115. Obviously, I'm biased. And so maybe Dallas pulls it out, but I think it's, another one of those one basket games either way. So if I was gonna bet here, I would probably take Dallas because of the points, but I don't want to do that, so I'm staying away from it. If I do make a play here, it's going to be on the total because I have this around 232, so there's a little bit of space there to take the over. I do think both of these teams come out with better offensive performances, but so far I haven't pulled the trigger on that. Mostly, honestly, because Dallas has a pretty good defense, and so that ratchets my confidence down a little bit in Minnesota being able to put up, close to 120, which I think is where I would hope they could get to. All right, next up is the trash game of the day, the Rockets at the Blazers, two of the worst teams in the league right now. Portland looks like they're likely to sit everybody they have that's decent again. They are in full-on tank mode. The Rockets have been for a long time. Both of these teams play zero defense. And we do have some people in this game still listed as game time decisions. Hart, Winslow, Simmons. I think it's likely they don't play. It's crazy anytime that Houston is actually favored in a game. I mean, that's just crazy. But I think that's the right side favored here, honestly. I think if you want anybody, it's Houston in this spot, but I don't think you want Houston. Only bet I'd consider here is the over because both of these teams are so terrible defensively. They both give up 120 plus on a regular basis, but both offenses suck generally. So I'd say stay away. That's my input. Last game of the day, 76ers at the Clippers. Potentially another good game. Here we got the Doc Rivers revenge game going on. They just played the Lakers a couple days ago. Now they go up against the Clippers. You never know. Like, this is one of those narrative things where I could see if Philly's in a good spot as a team, them actually wanting to come out and play hard and get a big win for Doc, blow out the Clippers. So I don't think that's off the table. It's one of the reasons you'll see that there's a certain way I want to play it, but I think Philly's the other spot that I like okay today, along with Detroit. Philadelphia hasn't been scoring great lately, so these are some things that make me a little hesitant on Philly. Their margin of victory in the last 10, looking at a spread of 5, they've won by 5, 7, lost by 5, 10, 4, overtime. So they've played a lot of close games where they've won. Some of them have covered this 5-point spread, but a number of them haven't, and so that would make me slightly hesitant. Last 14, they have been better on the road, though. 2 points better in offensive rating, 3 points better, or about 2 points better defensive rating. So a total of 4 points different. That makes me feel a little more positively about it. The Clippers are in the midst of a pretty weird stretch here. They had 3 days off, played Denver, 2 more days off. Now they're playing Philly. Then they have 3 more days off. So they're not playing a lot of basketball right now. And actually, I think that tends to work against teams more than it works for them. So I wouldn't put that as a positive in the Clippers column. Clippers also haven't played good teams very close lately. They did lose to Toronto by 3, so that was close, but lost to Denver by 12, Utah by 29, which we just talked about, how Utah's not even very good right now. Golden State by 15. They've scored under 100 in 3 out of their last 10 and under 110 in 7 out of their last 10. On the flip side, defensively, they've allowed 110 or more in 6 out of their last 10 games, and the others have been between 102 and 109. They have been better on offense at home lately. In their last 14, 119.5 offensive rating versus 113.2. So that's pretty solid. We definitely have to take that into account. There was news that came out today, and definitely shout out to Blaze. Hopefully you follow Blaze Bets on Twitter. Phenomenal guy, phenomenal capper. So you should be following him. He had shared how Jackson, Morris, and Batum are going to be getting their minutes limited more. And so let me work this all together. They're getting their minutes limited. You could say that if they're not going to play as much, then Philly gets to go up against the bench or the young guys for the Clippers. But I don't actually love that. And the reason why is at the end of the season here, I feel like what I'm seeing more often than not is when those young guys get in, they actually play harder than some of the veterans do, especially if there's not a lot to play for right now. And so I'd actually prefer the Clippers with those guys in more rather than the Clippers with them out. So I think that's a good reason to look at playing first half or first quarter. And when you look at the first quarter, Philadelphia is only 4-6 in their last 10 in the first quarter, but the Clippers are 1-8-1, and they've lost 5 straight outright. Also, those veterans are more likely to be playing in the first quarter. And that's a time where I could see the Clippers coming out pretty flat and the 76ers coming out hard, wanting to put a beating basically on the Clippers. And then I could see it maybe getting a little bit closer during the course of the second half. I line this game overall at 115-107 Philadelphia. So I like the -5 pretty well. But I definitely also like Philadelphia first quarter -1.5, or I actually played Philadelphia first quarter full game money line at -105. So any of those spots I think are pretty good. I think this and Detroit are the two spots that I would look at as ones that are worth playing in my estimation today. So I have 1 unit on that first quarter full game for the Sixers, and then 1 unit on Detroit -2.5. I may look at adding a little bit more to those spots. I'm going to see through the rest of the day what news we get and how confident I feel, but that's where I'm at for now. Hey, we did, if you're following along with bets on Betstamp, dug a hole on Monday, 4 units. I think I went down, finally got out of that hole yesterday with a +5 unit day. So we're up almost 5 units on the week now. If you've been following along, we'll try to keep that going. Definitely don't want to give any of it back, but in betting, there will be days where you give some back. So we'll try to ride those out and stay positive overall. That's the goal, is just to have a positive week every week. So if you want to see my picks, again, those are on Betstamp. Hit me up on Twitter if you want the link to that. Appreciate the retweets, the likes, the interaction. You guys are great, and appreciate you. Have a great day. Go make some money, and I'll see you on